There are whispers right now that the New Orleans Saints might be looking into the possibility of trading their star running back, Alvin Kamara. He's coming up on the final year of his rookie contract. He's been an absolute steal the last 3 years in New Orleans in terms of his production far outweighing what he's being paid. He's only slated to make $2.1 million this season. He's made less than $1 million per year the bulk of his rookie contract. So it is inevitable at this point that Alvin Kamara is likely going to push the Saints for a contract extension this summer. And if he doesn't get one, he will probably hold out. This is going to be a recurring theme for the Saints over the next year or two. They have drafted extremely well the past several years. The 2017 draft class in New Orleans was the best in the NFL that year. They had both the offensive and defensive rookie of the year in that draft class. We just saw the Saints let safety Von Bell walk in free agency because they didn't have the cap space to pay him. Now, sure, they could have figured out a way if they wanted to keep him, but they've got more important players coming up for extensions. So there was no use wasting cap space on Von Bell, even though I really liked him in that Saints secondary. So the question is, what do the Saints do about Alvin Kamara? Do they trade him? Do they offer him a contract extension? Give him big money? Or if he holds out a training camp, do the Saints hold their ground and essentially force him to play out his rookie contract? Make the $2.1 million that's left on his deal. Obviously, that last option is not ideal. That is a worst case scenario. We saw the Chargers do that with Melvin Gordon last year. And I don't think it really benefited the team or Melvin Gordon. He ended up returning to the team midway through the season, and he was a shell of the running back that he was in 2018. He didn't have training camp. He didn't have a preseason. So he really was not in football shape when he returned. And now he's off the damn team. Sean Payton and the Saints aren't afraid to let key players go. They've done it several times in the past, and sometimes it's ended up being a smart decision. They traded Jimmy Graham. Great decision. They traded Brandon Cooks. Another good decision. Darren Sproles. So it would not surprise me if the Saints traded Alvin Kamara if he asked for too much money than they were willing to give him. Now, is that the right decision? Alvin Kamara is a vital piece. He is a critical piece to the Saints offense. He averaged nearly 1,600 yards from scrimmage and 16 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons. He had a, quote, down year last season. And he still had over 1,300 scrimmage yards, and he missed 2 games. Now, granted, he was not the same running back after he came back from injury. It seemed like he was hesitant a lot of the time, which he has never been before in his NFL career. Even at times, it seemed like Alvin Kamara was afraid to take a hit. But I think that will change in the 2020 season. I think he was just real hesitant coming off of that injury. Now, some will argue that Alvin Kamara is not an every down back. This is true. I mean, he only plays 70% of the offensive snaps. But that is not his fault. That is by design. Sean Payton only allows him to play 70% of the time, so he keeps him healthy, keeps his legs fresh. If the Saints decided to trade Kamara, who is going to replace him? Who are they going to bring in, or who are they going to draft that can replace him? He's not a guy that's easily replaced. The offense, in my opinion, was worse in 2019 than it was the previous 2 years because they let Mark Ingram go. I think that had a profound impact on Alvin Kamara and both his play on the field and in the locker room. He and Mark Ingram were tight. I don't think it was as fun in New Orleans last year for Alvin Kamara without Mark Ingram being there. I don't think the Saints should trade Kamara, but I also don't want them to break the bank for him. If he's going to command Ezekiel Elliott type money, if he's going to ask for 10, 12, 15 million a year, I don't think it'd be worth it. You look at the teams that consistently win in the NFL. They make smart personnel decisions. One of those is that you don't overpay for running backs. There's a couple of reasons for that. The NFL is a passing league. The running game isn't as important as it was 20, 25, 30 years ago. Also, there's a fresh crop of talented running backs entering the league every year through the draft, and you can pay them significantly less money to get close to the same production level as you'd get with a veteran running back. Now, more importantly, running backs age so fast in the NFL. We all know that. In a lot of cases, by the time they're getting out of the rookie contract, they're also nearing the end of their prime. By 25, 26 years old, a running back's career is damn near over. We have seen what happens to teams that make the mistake of committing big money to a star running back. It rarely works out. A couple of years ago, the Rams gave Todd Gurley a contract extension. Now, how'd that work out? His production dropped. Sean McVay eased him out of the offense, and now he's not even on the fucking team anymore. The Atlanta Falcons gave Devontae Freeman a mega money contract after he had 2 big years in 2015 and 2016. Rushed for over 1,000 yards, had 11 touchdowns each year. He gets his money, turns 25 years old. Rushing yards dropped 200 yards the following season. Then last season, he was a complete non-factor. 656 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. An atrocious season for Devontae Freeman. Whether or not Alvin Kamara remains in New Orleans is going to be entirely up to him. If he wants to take a contract in the $6-7 million range, I'm sure the Saints would pay him. But if he wants top running back money, if he wants to be one of the highest paid running backs in the league, he's going to have to go somewhere else to make that happen. So Alvin Kamara's got to decide, do I want more money or do I want to win? Am I willing to accept less money to stay on a winning team, a team that's got a chance at the Super Bowl? Or do I want to get paid and be with a losing franchise? Because that's what it's going to come down to. Winning teams don't overpay running backs. You know which teams like to pay running backs? Teams like the New York Jets, who haven't won a fucking thing in almost 10 years. Le'Veon Bell decided that, I'm tired of winning in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. I want to get the fuck out of here and make some money. The Jets welcomed him with open arms, gave him over $13 million a year with $35 million guaranteed over 4 years. In return, he gave the Jets his worst season as an NFL running back. It just doesn't work out most of the time. Paying running backs just does not work out. So it's up to Kamara to decide, and that's assuming there will be a team willing to pay him $13, $15 million a year. This free agency period was not good to running backs. I mentioned Melvin Gordon. He wanted big money from the Chargers last year. Ended up settling for less in Denver. Also, next offseason, when Alvin Kamara would hit free agency, it's going to be a crowded free agent class for running backs. Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Kenyon Drake, Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Marlon Mack. The list goes on the amount of running backs that are going to be in free agency in 2021. As a Saints fan, I hope they can work something out with Alvin Kamara. But like I said a couple of times, it's going to be up to him. Because if he demands money that Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis aren't willing to pay him, there is not a doubt in my mind that they will trade him this offseason. They are not going to get nothing in return for Alvin Kamara. They're not going to let him walk away for free in free agency. All right, the NFL draft is coming up next week, and with nothing going on in the world of sports, there's even more talk and speculation surrounding the NFL draft than there usually is. Joe Burrow is expected to be the number 1 overall pick. Everyone knows that. Highly probable that he will be heading to Cincinnati to play with the Bengals, the worst franchise in the NFL. A couple of months ago, there were rumors that Joe Burrow might pull an Eli Manning and refuse to sign with Cincinnati if they drafted him. Now, he has since come out and stated that he would be willing to play with whichever team drafts him. Now, throughout all this time leading to the draft, Joe Burrow hasn't exactly been what I would call positive about the idea of playing with the Bungles. Every time you see him in an interview or he gets asked about it, his response is always lukewarm at best about the possibility of spending the next few years in Cincinnati. And honestly, who can blame him? I've said it many times on this podcast. If you're a rookie quarterback, or if you're a rookie, period, and you're entering the NFL, the last place you want to go is Cincinnati. It's the place NFL careers go to die. You'll be irrelevant. AJ Green is a phenomenal wide receiver when he's healthy. Yet, he doesn't get the spotlight he would get if he played in Green Bay, Seattle, Philadelphia, New Orleans, New England, anywhere else in the league, because he's playing with the Bungles. The one franchise in the NFL that everyone looks at as a joke. The one franchise that is not committed to winning. Joe Burrow was on Shaq's podcast last week, and here's what he had to say about his draft prospects. I just want to get drafted to a good team, good organization that is going to maximize my talents. I've won everywhere that I've been. I've never had a losing season in sports from the moment I was 5 years old. I'm not a loser. I just want to go somewhere where I can win. Teams are picking at the top for a reason. And I feel like I said before, I've won everywhere that I've ever been. I feel like if anybody can do it, I can do it. Does that sound like Joe Burrow is excited about heading to Cincinnati? He points out that teams are picking at the top of the draft for a reason. They're losers. He states that he wants to go to a good organization. Joe Burrow is not accustomed to losing. He hasn't lost a game since late 2018. He's won at the high school level, the college level. He was the top quarterback in the country at LSU. He's going from a college football program with a deep history of success and winning. LSU's a multiple-time national champion, to an NFL franchise that is a consistent loser, hasn't won a playoff game since Joe Burrow has been on this planet. The Bungles are an embarrassment. The one positive from what Joe Burrow said was he felt if anyone could turn a team around, in this case, the Bungles, that he could do it. That's the right mindset to have. I like his confidence. But winning at the NFL level is different. It is extremely difficult. It is a lot more difficult to win at the NFL level than it is in college football. Winning at LSU is not difficult. They have maybe 2 tough games a year. The rest of the schedule is full of bullshit teams that don't have one NFL caliber player on their roster. I think playing in Cincinnati is going to be tough on Joe Burrow, especially mentally in the beginning. It's going to be difficult to go from a life accustomed to winning since he was 5 years old to consistently losing. I'm not saying that Joe Burrow can't turn things around in Cincinnati, but I don't think it's going to happen his rookie season, if it even happens at all. The Bungles have a notorious reputation around the NFL of having ownership that is not committed to winning. Joe Burrow isn't the first guy that's coming into Cincinnati thinking that he can turn this franchise around. I can reverse the curse of this organization. I can turn this franchise into a contender. He's not the first guy to think like that. Carson Palmer was drafted number 1 overall. He thought that he could turn the Bungles around. He got so fed up with the organization not being committed to winning that he fake retired in 2010. Then they ended up trading him to Oakland the following season. Andy Dalton thought he could win in Cincinnati. Now, to his credit, he won some games. They won the division, but they were never real contenders. Real contenders win playoff games. The Bengals haven't won a fucking playoff game since 1990. This is going to be a difficult transition for Joe Burrow. We've seen guys who were highly successful at the college level, guys who have won at every level of football before entering the NFL, get drafted to struggling franchises, start losing for the first times in their lives, and they completely fall apart. It happened to Jamarcus Russell, another LSU quarterback. Happened to Matt Leinart, Ryan Leaf. The fact of the matter is, we don't know how Joe Burrow will react to losing for the first time in his life. I hope he has nothing but success in Cincinnati. I like Joe Burrow a lot. He's my favorite quarterback in this draft class. But playing in Cincinnati is going to be difficult. I hope he can reverse the trend there. Maybe he can be the first quarterback drafted by the Bungles whose career doesn't die. All right, I'm going to do something that I rarely do on this podcast. I'm going to defend Dak Prescott. Dak is normally one of my favorite punching bags on this show. Between him, Bill O'Brien, and Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns, the Cincinnati Bungles, they give me plenty of material to talk about and criticize. But I'm going to defend Dak Prescott today. Over the weekend, Dak had a birthday party at his house outside of Dallas. Now, it's unclear whose birthday party it was or if it was even a birthday party at all. It's unclear how many people were there. We know Ezekiel Elliott was there because he was in a picture that was posted to social media. Some reports say there were 10 people at the party. Other reports say there were as many as 30 people there. Who fucking cares? The point is, Dak Prescott had a party. And everyone is all upset about it. Dak is flaunting his nose at the government. He isn't practicing social distancing. You know what? I could give a fuck less about what Dak Prescott is doing in his free time at his house. The last time I checked, we still live in America. If he wants to have a party at his house, let him have a party. Driving around my city this weekend, I saw people having block parties all over the place. There was no social distancing being practiced. What pisses me off about this story is that someone actually called the cops and snitched on Dak for having this party. Really? If I were Dak Prescott, I would sell my house immediately because I don't want to live next to people who snitch on me for having a good time with my friends. I feel like people are getting carried away with this whole social distancing thing. Does it really affect you in any way if Dak Prescott has a party at his house? No. So leave him the fuck alone about it. Some people will make the argument that Dak is a public figure. He's the face of the Dallas Cowboys. He's a role model. He should behave more responsibly. Be a leader. Bullshit. Charles Barkley said it best in the 1990s. I am not a role model. These are young men in their 20s with millions of dollars. I promise you, worrying about the coronavirus is at the bottom of their priority list. They're not worried about it. People keep forgetting, these shelter-in-place orders, this social distancing, these are guidelines. These are not laws. This is not India, where the police can beat the shit out of you for violating a shelter-in-place order. So they can't stop Dak Prescott from having family and friends over to his house. I think it's ridiculous that somebody actually called the cops on him in the first place and told on him. All right, that's all I have for today, guys. Obviously, there's not much going on in sports right now. Every day, the news feed gets smaller and smaller in terms of sports news. The further we get away from NFL free agency, the less there is to talk about. I'm hoping sooner rather than later the NBA announces a return date for their season. Then at least we can start speculating about the playoffs. Because until then, it's going to continue to be a struggle to find interesting things to talk about. You know what? I just thought about something. I want to get to Ronda Rousey real quick. I don't talk much about UFC on this podcast. I don't talk at all about WWE. But I saw a story that was kind of interesting over the weekend. Ronda Rousey, if you don't know, she was in WWE, I think, maybe 1 or 2 years ago. And she went on a podcast this weekend. I believe it was Steve-O's podcast. And she was just completely trashing WWE. I think it was mainly WWE's fan base. The WWE has the weirdest fan base in all of entertainment. NBA fans, if you're a fan of an NBA team, you don't buy tickets to the game to boo your own team. You don't watch the games at home and just hate everything that's going on. But that's how a lot of WWE fans are. If you look at Twitter during one of the shows they run on Monday nights, all you will see in a WWE Twitter timeline is WWE fans just completely decimating the product. I've never seen anything like it in my life where people that are, quote, fans of something hate it. They literally hate watch it. It's like they almost enjoy hating the WWE. It makes absolutely no sense to me why you would watch something that you don't like. So Ronda Rousey goes on Steve-O's podcast and she bashes the WWE fans, and then her and some other WWE women's wrestler get into a Twitter spat about it, and they're going back and forth online, and, Ronda Rousey, she's, beating her chest like she's a badass. I've never understood why people think that Ronda Rousey is such a badass. In my opinion, she is the most overrated UFC fighter of all time. To start off with, when she got into the UFC, Dana White just handed her the Bantamweight Championship. And then they lined up her first, 5 or 6 opponents in the UFC with cupcake fighters. Liz Carmucci, whoever that is, Sarah McMahon, Alexis Davis. The only one that she fought that I'd even ever heard of was Miesha Tate. And it took her 3 rounds to beat her. Most of her other fights, she was winning in seconds. 14 seconds, 34 seconds. Ronda Rousey, the UFC and Dana White built her up to be this unstoppable force. And she was, fighting lesser quality fighters. And then they matched her up with Holly Holm, a legitimate boxer. Someone that can take your head off. And that is exactly what she did to Ronda Rousey. Now, a lot of times, most of the time actually in the fight game, it's not about losing. It's about how you bounce back from the loss. How you bounce back from adversity. Up until that point in her life, in the fight game anyway, Ronda Rousey had never faced adversity. So she loses to Holly Holm. She falls off the map for an entire year until the fight with Amanda Nunes is scheduled. Now, Ronda Rousey doesn't want to do press leading up to the fight. She doesn't want to do the weigh-in. She doesn't want to see the media or the public at all. She gets into the octagon with Amanda Nunes and gets knocked the fuck out in under a minute. And then she retires from the UFC. I don't even think she was 30 years old when she retired. And this is the greatest women's UFC fighter of all time? I don't think so. Ronda Rousey is the most overrated UFC fighter of all time. Anyway, I don't even know why I brought that up. I saw that earlier this afternoon when I was at my office, and I just thought it was real interesting that the WWE gave Ronda Rousey an opportunity, paid her millions of dollars to come in. I think she ended up staying there for maybe a year, year and a half. And then she trashes the fans of the product for hating the product. I just thought it was interesting. All right, that's all for today. Make sure to click that like and subscribe button. Hit that notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Leave me a comment in the section below. Let me know what you think about the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. I will be back later this week, probably Thursday or Friday. Enjoy your week, and I will see you on Thursday or Friday.